Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Theater Tuesdays. And today I'm really excited. I have with me one of my friends, one of my fellow theater lovers. We're talking with the founder of Theater Lovers group on Facebook. We're talking to Megan Gutierrez. Thank you so much, Megan, for coming on.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I've been a member of Utah Theater Lovers on Facebook for a long time, but we didn't actually meet until I finally went on one of the big trips in 2022 March, and that was a great experience. And so this is your first time on the podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about what you do for Utah Theater Lovers and just theater lovers in general?
Yeah, so it's pretty much a community that started back in 2012, I think. Yeah, about then. And it's just a community of patrons or people who like to attend the theater. And we host a monthly event attending a local show at least once a month. And then we try to do a bunch of trips. Over the years, we've found that people want to attend shows outside of the Utah scene. And so that's become a need and an interest. So we started putting together trips that we attend everywhere from Utah Shakespeare Festival, which we're doing here in a couple weeks, all the way to Edinburgh, Scotland, and London, and Vegas to Boston, pretty much anywhere where there's a show that people want to see, we go to. So that's kind of what we do.
So how did you develop your love of theater? What were some of your first experiences growing up?
I remember always having a love of theater. So from the earliest age, I remember being drawn to movie musicals and always wanting to watch the movie musicals, even from like Disney shows, of course. But I would be drawn to the carousels and the Oklahomas. Just last week, I was talking to my sister and she's like, I've never seen Oklahoma. I'm like, I can remember seeing that when I was like 7. Yeah. That was one of my favorite shows. So I always had a love of that growing up and being drawn to that, wanting to listen to that type of music more than, the popular music that my friends were listening to. And then really what was the big moment of my life is my parents brought me to Les Miserables when I was a teenager. And that was the moment I remember when those first notes of the show came on, and then walking out of the theater, I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed, not as an actor, but this is where I'm supposed to live and breathe and be a part of. And over the years, I remember thinking, I know I will have been successful in my life and a career when I can own season tickets to any show and any theater I want to go to. And that will be my marker for success is season tickets. And so that was the trajectory of my life.
I can relate to that big time because I had the same kind of trajectory as far as Les Mis. The first music that I ever really remember loving was The Little Mermaid in 1989. But other than that, Les Mis was like the foundation of like media, and particularly the 10th anniversary concert. It come out right around kind of when I was super hardcore into. I mean, I knew every line to every song. I joke that if they needed a swing at any moment, I could.
Absolutely. That's how I was. I listened to it constantly. And the movie for me was Newsies. That was the movie version was Newsies. I knew every line. And, like Little Mermaid for you, Newsies was that. And the complete symphonic recording, the 3-disc version of Les Mis was the version that I fell in love with.
Yeah. It was, and it was funny. My freshman year of high school, we did this trip to New York because I was in Maryland, so we weren't that far. It was this choir trip, and we got the choice of either going to see Cats or going to see Les Mis.
Oh,
so I picked Les Mis.
That's amazing. Oh, I'm so glad you made that choice. Yeah, I'm glad you made that choice. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Is that's one of the first ones that really made an impact on you as far as the shows?
Yep. Les Mis was the big one that started it. That was when I realized like, oh, it's not the high school musicals that I was used to seeing, on stage, or, I grew up LDS. And so at that, I saw a bunch of like the
Right.
church
Road
production,
shows
and it was road shows at the time. Yeah. So that was the first time I realized, this is what a Broadway musical is, and realized what it could be. So that was the big moment.
Well, so we just had Les Mis, the tour, come through here.
Yes.
What did you think of what did you think of it?
It was phenomenal. It was really incredible. That production was, it was largely based, and a lot of the concept from that production was pulled from the 2014 revival on Broadway. And I had kind of gotten a little bit jaded with Les Mis over the years. I'd seen far too many productions of it. I'd kind of gotten burned out on it. And I was lucky enough in 2016, I was going to be in New York for one night, and a colleague of mine was with me for work. And I found out he'd never seen a Broadway show, like, ever. And I had planned on going to see some off Broadway show, and I couldn't in good conscience be in New York on Broadway and not take him to his first Broadway production, and Les Mis being playing. I could not take him to Les Mis. And seeing that production on Broadway, and that revival, that version of it, it restored all of my love, and it reminded me my love of the show, and it restored all of my love of it. And so much of that production was in this version of it. And I just thought it was such, what they did with the lighting and the projections, and some of the restaging of it. I really think it brought a breath of fresh air into the production. I still don't think, they several years ago, they cut about 15 minutes out of the show. And I still don't agree with that choice.
Yeah.
I don't agree with what some of the speeding up of the tempo, but that's the snob, the Les Mis snob.
Like it's still Les Mis. I still am moved by it. I still enjoyed it. I had some, I don't know if you say it's nitpicks, but I don't love the non-rotating stage adaptation. Especially the Barricade. It's just not as good. It's not as immersive. It's not as, and I don't understand why that change was made a few years ago. And I don't know, it's not as good as the rotating stage, and being able to see all sides of the Barricade and feel like immersed in. And I thought the empty chairs and empty tables was bonkers. I was like, what?
You're singing about,
why did they have it with no chairs, no tables, like in these weird balls? I don't know. I was just like, what?
And you're saying here where my friend's saying, and like, you're not in the same place that they sing of Revolution. You're not even in the location. Yes, I agree with that.
It's so weird. And I'm if it had been kind of an abstract show up until that point, like with like weird, unique, kind of quirky, then I would be like, okay, I guess that's fine. But like it had been pretty straight as in an interpretation of the show. So all of a sudden to go like mystical and have these weird balls, and I was just
I'll take
like,
that.
what?
I'll take that.
Yeah, but I love Les Mis. So it's one of those shows that's almost impossible to do wrong. I know a lot of people hated the movie, but it's just Les Mis. I still, even with Russell Crowe's terrible singing, I still enjoy it.
See, and I like Russell Crowe, and I think he did a fine job. I think he was miscast with the rest of the cast. Like he wasn't mixed with that cast well. Like, I think he was just not matched with that cast. His voice didn't just match. Like, he was too grungy for that cast.
Yeah, like if he had been
done well with another cast
in like Rock of Ages or something like that, like that with a little more edge, then but it did not fit, especially for Stars, which is such a beautiful song. And the movie has problems. I'm aware, but I still like it. It's still Les Mis.
Yeah. And I appreciate the fact that they tried to do something different and try to bring something unique and fresh to it.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate a production trying to do something new and creative with something, but it just didn't,
Yeah.
It didn't work all the way, but again, it's Les Mis, so you
Yeah.
got to love it either way.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, so how did you first start Utah Theater Lovers?
Yeah, so I realized in the late 2000s, 2008 or so, I wanted to quote rent a community of my own.
Mhm.
I was a theater patron. I loved going to the shows, but I was going alone. I went alone a lot. I was married at the time, but my ex-wife didn't love theater.
Mhm.
And so she would go with me, but she would often fall asleep.
Mhm.
And it was a really expensive nap. So I got, so
Yeah.
I'd start going alone a lot. And I was looking for people to talk about theater like I was just wanting to talk to people. It's a very extroverted art. So I
Mhm.
started theater. I started to review theater. I worked with Utah theater bloggers for a little bit and front row reviewers, and started kind of doing that for a little while. And then I started kind of my own blog and started doing blogging about it. And that it just didn't quite hit for me. I'm not a critic. I'm a
Mhm.
theater lover.
Mhm.
I didn't want to talk about the lighting, and I didn't want to talk about the things that I didn't love about it. I
Mhm.
wanted to go in and talk about all the things I did love about it. I wanted to lose myself in the experience. So that didn't quite work. Then I started thinking, okay, well, maybe I want to hang out with the actors. They're the people. So I started kind of making some friends with actors and connecting with some of the actors and people, and that didn't quite fit either. They wanted to be on the stage. I didn't.
Mhm.
I wanted to be applauding. They and overgeneralization. They kind of wanted to be the center of the attention. I didn't want that world. Um, so I kept checking Meetup along the way. I kept thinking there's got to be like a Meetup group, and I had conversations with people along the way, specifically my brother, like, what if there was like a coffee with the critics group, or something like that? And that, and I talked a little bit with the Utah theater bloggers about getting that kind of group. And we kind of decided with the Utah theater bloggers group to kind of get that up and off the ground. And we started that kind of with them. We announced that. And I started it with that group and kind of hosted it and announced it through the Utah Theater Bloggers group that we were going to do it. And it never really took off with the Theater Bloggers group. So I stopped doing the reviewing and I just did it on my own. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to run with this. I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to step away from reviewing. I'm going to step away from trying to be friends with actors. And I'm going to start a patron centric group that is about going to the theater. And I found the recipe that worked was a Saturday afternoon. And it was about connecting. It's about
Mhm.
going to, after the show, it's about going and talking about theater. It's about hanging out with people. It's about connecting. It's about experiencing the show. And it's about talking about it. And that's what we've done. So since
Mhm.
then, sans 2020, that's what we've done pretty much every month since 2012. We go to a show. I took a year off there when I had my little baby. She's now 9. I took a year off for maternity leave, and a friend of mine
Mhm.
kind of ran the group for a year. And we've done that since then. And I wanted to find a community of my own. I wanted to find my people, and I did. I found my tribe and my friends, and so many of my dearest and nearest friends to me
Yeah.
now are from that group.
Well, and I love what you're saying, because I think that there is something special about the theater patron. As
Yeah.
much as I love my actor friends, absolutely, and even the critic friends, that since I started reviewing theater, there is something special about the theater fan.
Yeah.
It's different. It really
It,
is.
it is
Yeah.
different. And each has its merit. Each has its
Mhm.
merit. And I
Mhm.
do. I have my critic friends still. I have my actor friends still. But my patron friends are my people.
Mhm.
We're the ones, and oh, trust me, we can get critical. We
Yeah.
can sit at that dinner table and we can get critical. We can talk about the show, but it's not in the public light, and it's not it's in a different way.
Yeah.
It's how did the show hurt me? It's how did the show how did the show warm my heart? It's how did the show change me? It's how did the show make me a better person? How did the
Mhm.
show it could be all of those things. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think that's what some people missed because when the theaters were closed for the pandemic, it was like a traumatic experience for me. Like it really
was awful.
was caused me trauma.
Oh,
And I know some people would just be like, "What? It's just like entertainment. What?" And but that communal experience of being with is sharing this even if it's a terrible show, like that experience is like I need it.
oh,
And it was very devastating to go without it.
oh, I mean, it's my world.
Yeah.
It's what I do monthly. It's where my friends are. I mean,
Yeah.
I see any given year anywhere from 50 to 100 shows a year. And
Yeah.
so I definitely hit a depression and
Yeah.
needed to find ways to reach out to my theater community during the pandemic, because it's very much part of my world and who I am.
Yeah.
And it was jarring for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you a fan of Rachel's reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/hallmarkies. So how did you start doing the trips, and how did you get the connections with like Tim and Karina and this kind of that are all part of planning
Yeah.
and making these trips go?
Yeah, so the trips came about is I started going to Broadway Con, which is like a Comic Con for theater fans, a theater convention in New York. So I went to the first one, I think it was 2016 or 17, and I went by myself, and it just was kind of wild. There was a handful of Utah people there, because we do that, and well, and there was a couple people that went. I think I went with a friend,
Yeah.
and there was, and we ran into. There was a handful of theater people there from Utah. And of course, we connected up, and so I was posting in the, on the social medias of the theater people that I'm connected with, like in the Theater Lovers group, and I'm like, "Hey, wild idea! Who would be interested in doing a group trip next year?" And there was some buzz. And they're like, "Okay, yeah, we'd be interested." And then Karina, as a travel agent friend of ours, was a member of our meetup group, and she flat out cold called me. And she's like, "So I'm a member of the meetup group. Do you want to do this? Let's do this. Let's put together a group." So that was kind of the initials. But then there was also a high school group that I found out was going. And there was a random connection that was a friend of the high school leader that was going. And she found out that they allow people to go with them, like friends of friends. And she's like, do you want to bring some of your friends? I don't even know how I got connected to this high school group. And I'm like, yeah. So I put it kind of feelers out, and I'm like, hey, does any of our group want to go? And there was like 5 people that wanted to go on that group. So I kind of organized a mini group, and there was 5 of us, and this was kind of mid Karina, before Karina and I really got kind of involved. And so there was 5 of us that went with the idea of going to Hamilton, because it was like a Hamilton trip. And there was 5 of us that decided to go to Hamilton. And then the high school group's like, oh, whoops, we actually don't have Hamilton tickets. So it was really kind of crazy, but there was 5 of us that went, and I organized it all, and I did it all, and it was really stressful. And I brought my daughter, and we ended up getting Hamilton tickets, and I bought them for like $500 a piece, and it was insane. But it was we got third row tickets to the original cast, and it was crazy. So that was our first like official trip, was to go see Hamilton with we tagged along with this high school group. And then we just kind of did our own thing. So that was our first official trip. And then we paired up with Karina, and Karina started doing it. And when we were on the Hamilton trip, we had set up a walking tour in New York, and we showed up for this walking tour, and the group, they stood us up, and they were like, they were nowhere to be found. So we're like, okay, I brought up Google and I said, okay, next walking tour on the list. And I called them and I said, okay, we got stood up by this walking tour. And they're like, oh, we have one starting at 11 show up at this corner. And we showed up at this corner, and that was Tim. And
wow.
so that was how we met with Tim. And so when I met up with Karina, I said, we've got Tim. He's amazing. We're not using anybody but Tim. And that's Tim. Tim is with Broadway Up Close walking tours, and he's incredible.
Mhm.
And he was kind of, I think he'd been around, he'd been doing them for 2 or 3 years at that point. And now he's, got his own kiosk in Times Square. So we've watched him build up his business, and he's incredible. And that's how we kind of found him, is just by sheer luck. And
Mhm. Yeah, that was the part that was the most undersold, I think, as far as going on the trip, because especially you kept saying that they were like that as far as the craft, I was like, and you were saying that you get to go to his office, and I was like, why do I want to go to his office?
You don't know, you don't get it. It's so hard to sell Tim until you experience Tim.
And then it was like, oh, this is actually a really cute craft, and it was fun. And, and I was like, okay, this was worth it. And the tour itself was excellent, really fun, engaging, like stuff that you wouldn't find on an easy like Google search. You know?
And that's the thing. It's like, hey, how do you it's kind of you can't tell people, oh, we're gonna do a craft in some guy's office, and people are like,
what? Like, why do I want to do this?
So you kind of have to keep it under wraps, because until you know Tim, until you experience Tim. And then Tim is every single time he's a highlight, sometimes even above and beyond the shows we see.
The only thing that was a total miss for me on the trip was Ellen's Stardust. I thought it was the worst food I have ever had at a dining establishment. It was terrible.
We're gonna cut it.
Even the ice cream was bad. Like, how do you make ice cream bad? I was just like, it is not worth hearing these people sing. No way.
And and we send out the surveys at the end of the trip, and we've officially decided we're no longer doing Ellen's Stardust. As much as we love the singing wait staff, we have heard loud and clear, we are no longer. And I think over the years, it's progressively gotten worse. The food used to be like, and it's just, Ellen's has officially gone by the wayside. I think we're going to try to.
I was looking longingly at the McDonald's across the street. I mean, it was so bad. I just could not believe how bad that food was. It was so bad.
It's so kitschy. I mean, it's definitely, it's never been about the food. It's the balance of does the singing wait staff outweigh the bad food, and the scales finally tipped, and it's like, no, it doesn't. Nope, not anymore. So it's gone by the wayside. We will no longer be doing that.
Yeah, that's good. It was, I just, there's so many great places to eat in New York. There's no excuse.
Sardi's is going to be on, we're going to try to.
Oh, that'd be fun.
I think Sardi's is the one that's going to.
Or even like Juniors would be more fun, or, just some place
we've done
like that, but yeah. Otherwise, I had an absolutely great time. I mean, the catalyst, well, once I got vaccinated, I said, you know what, I'm going to do everything I can to support local theater. And it was kind of crazy to me, because the first show that I saw after being vaccinated was Les Mis at Hale, which is that was such kismet.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And so, and people might not understand how intense the theater scene here is in Utah.
Amazing.
I mean, you could literally go to a show every day, every single day.
Oh yeah. There's the list. I compile a list of shows, and we have, and I try to update it twice a year, and we've got over 300 shows, usually running in Utah at any given time, and we've got over 100 theater companies that,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
And I just am continually blown away by the quality of so many of them. I mean, I think about like Hope Box Theater. I don't think I've seen a bad show there. I mean, they are always so good.
Yeah. They're incredible. Yeah. It is absolutely astounding what we have here. And there's theater companies I have yet to visit.
Yeah.
And I look forward to it. And then there's theater companies the first time I go to them, I'm like, this is incredible. And we have new ones coming up on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to me. I'm like, where did this come from? Yeah.
Yeah. Like one of my biggest finds was the Pleasant Grove Players at Pleasant Grove Library. You would never believe that the quality of the productions that come out of this tiny little theater in the Pleasant Grove Library. But I haven't seen a miss from them. I saw the Fantastics there, which I don't love, but they still did a really good job with it. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I have actually never seen the Fantastics, which is
not my favorite.
Like it was like the longest running show in New York.
Yeah.
And I have yet to ever see it. Yeah.
I mean, like Try to Remember is an all-time great. That's a beautiful song.
Absolutely.
But everything else I don't love. It's not my favorite. But yeah, I've seen it now. I've seen it twice because I saw it at Centerpoint recently. They did it, and I was just like, you know what? This is just not for me. This show.
Oh no, that's probably why I've never seen it. Is because I know the premise, and I'm just like, nah. I will see it at some point, just because it's
Yeah, you got to check it off the bucket list,
and you have to see it.
Yeah.
But I haven't had the opportunity, and but no, I haven't seen anything at Pleasant Grove Library either. So
yeah, you should. It's really good. But anyway, so people don't realize that, but I also wanted to support New York, of course. And so I really wanted to see the Music Man revival. So that was the real catalyst. They finally was like, you know what, I'm going to save up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go on I wanted to go for a long time, but it is expensive, but I do think it's worth it.
Yeah.
You get your money's worth, but I saved up and I went on that trip, and it was an amazing experience. It was just so great. Yeah.
And we tried to put a lot of thought into it. We try to balance the cost and try to keep it in the price range. You could do your Broadway Across America is quite a bit more expensive, and they're a little bit more luxury trips. And then there's cheaper trips out there, right?
Yeah.
And they do it a little bit more on a dime, and you could definitely put your own trips together on a dime, but we try to balance those experiences, and we try to include a lot of group elements, because just like the success with the group in general, we really believe in the connection piece and helping people connect with each other.
Yeah.
Because we believe that a large part of theater is connecting with each other. And like I said, the reason I started the group is finding a community of my own. And so that is woven into everything we do, is you'll see in our trips and our events is we build group meals we build in opportunities after every show to connect with each other and talk with each other. And it really is part of it is finding opportunities to share the experience together.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we do.
Well, it was cool because we saw stuff together, but then most of us individually saw things as well.
Yeah.
So it was like a group. We kind of saw all of New York for a week, which was like, I saw Phantom of the Opera. I think I was the only one, the only other one who saw that, and other people saw and the MJ musical, and so that was really cool too. Yeah, be part of that sharing. What did we all think of these different shows and stuff.
And exactly. We do a lot of the downtime as well. So if people we build in, it's a balance of, we have downtime so people can go do their sightseeing and see their different shows. So we'll include 3 shows, but then we'll also include slots for those crazy extreme theater lovers to go see 5 more shows if they want. But then those people who don't want to see 5 more shows could go see the Statue of Liberty. And so there's a balance of, you can do your individual downtime. So people who don't want to be with somebody 24/7 like me, who's super extroverted, but somebody who wants to do a little bit more introverted time also has some downtime as well. So there's a balance of all of that that we try to give people as well.
Yeah, I thought it was good. And it was so neat to get to see the Music Man revival, because I had seen it, the 2000 revival with Rebecca Luker and Craig Bierko. I'd gone on a special trip with my grandma and my cousin. We'd gone to see the Rockettes. My grandma loved the Rockettes. My grandma loved them so much. And so we saw the Rockettes, and we saw Music Man, and we saw Beauty and the Beast. And so all 3 of those shows, they have huge nostalgia for me. Huge nostalgia.
Yeah. And that's, I think Music Man is that way for a lot of people. It's a very nostalgic show, and it just is that way. And it's a lot of fun for that.
It was not the best version of Music Man I've ever seen, but it was still super fun.
Yeah. It was very entertaining, but I could find other productions I enjoyed as well.
There was a production, I think it was actually 2021 at Centerpoint, that was outstanding. It was
good.
So good. Yeah. That's a great theater. The productions they do there are almost always top notch.
We just saw Matilda up there, and it was fantastic.
Oh yeah. Although they cut out like a large amount, which was very surprising to me. I don't know how I guess they must have gotten approval or something. They cut out the entire brother. He wasn't even. I was like, what?
Do I remember that?
Yeah.
I'm not as familiar with the show.
They cut out at least 20 minutes, but Matilda is a show, and we'll talk a little bit about over and underrated shows we think are over and underrated. I like Matilda. I think it has some major nice bops, but I do think I understand why they felt the need to cut it, because I do think it is way too long.
That's probably, I'm not very familiar with it, because I'm just like, I can take it or leave it. My little one. Yeah. So that's why we went and saw it. But yeah.
If I had my way, if I was doing a revival of Matilda, I would cut out the entire escapologist plot. I don't think it is necessary. I don't think it adds hardly anything.
You're right.
It's just, you don't need it. You don't need it. Like, we understand the connection between Trunchbull and Miss Honey. We don't need this whole thing.
No, other than to give like Matilda a little bit of the superhuman hero ability, but you can do that with the telekinesis. Yeah,
you don't need it. Cut it.
Yeah, I agree. I saw Matilda in New York, and I remember thinking that's a smart musical, but I don't need to ever see it again.
Yeah. So you would say that's an overrated one in your eyes?
I don't even know if it's overrated, because I don't think I would definitely say it's overrated. I don't care for it that much, but I love the Netflix version of it a lot more.
Yeah. I wish they'd cut out the escapologist though.
Same.
They cut out all the parents' songs.
Yeah, I think
no, why didn't you cut out the escapologist? You cut out like bops.
You see, a lot of people really love Matilda. That's why I say I don't know if it's really overrated, because I don't think it's really that popular.
I think it is this generation's Annie, though, for it's a lot of kids, I think, introduction to musical theater. So in that sense,
it's easy to cast so many kids.
Yeah. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies
or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
See a version in Payson Community Theater that was absolutely outstanding. It was so good. Like, you can't do it better. Like, all the performances were excellent. The production, the dancing, it was, you just can't believe it that you see at Payson High School, you see this quality of a production. It was so good. And it was fun because the Trunchbull and Miss Honey in real life were a married couple, which was fun.
Oh, that is fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute. Oh, I know that is fun.
Yeah. I love
And so to your point, I think it's a good production that allows a lot of kids the opportunity to act and get into the theater. It's an easy production to cast a lot of kids in.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't see it done a lot. So
yeah, I think it's expensive. It's probably part of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Is my guess.
Yeah.
But yeah. What do you have any others that you're just like the people love and you're like,
probably one that I'm not a big fan of. It's quite popular even around here is Book of Mormon. It's still on Broadway. People love it. I'm not big on, and I am this way in general. I don't find humor at the expense of other people.
Yeah.
I'm not big on that. And I'm not a South Park fan either. So just that kind of humor in general, I'm not a big fan of. When I saw it in New York when it first opened, I saw it in previews and I walked out going, yeah, no, this is not for me. So,
I've never seen it, so I can't say, but yeah, that's partly why I've never seen it, is it just doesn't look like my thing, I try to have
that you can laugh at yourself and people like that. And so but I don't like it.
I think that it's one thing to laugh at yourself. It's another thing to be like openly mocked for 2 hours. I don't know, and half truths, and it just doesn't look like my thing.
No, and it's also the treatment of the African culture.
Yeah,
and there's I think humor that goes too far. There's just humor about. And I'll call it. There's humor about rape and those kind of things, and I'm like, there's just too much, and I'm like, I don't think that's okay. And I'm like, nope, I don't see how that's funny. So that's just not, that's okay.
I can see that. I can see that. The big one, and I've said this before on this show, the big current show that everyone loves that I was kind of met on is, I didn't love Six. I didn't think it was that great.
Same.
I just was like, it's really short. Like, the songs are okay, but there's no story. There's no production aside from the costumes. I just didn't think it was, to me, it felt like the kind of show that you'd see in Vegas.
Yeah.
Like, they have these like little shows in between the gambling. Like, that's what Six felt like to me. And I was just like, it's not that great. It's like,
I saw it. We brought the group to London and we saw it in London, and almost everybody in the group loved it. And I'm like, and not my favorite. And I was like, one of the only ones in the group that did not like it. And
I didn't hate it. It was just very like, what? That's it?
Yeah. And I've seen like American Idiot was a very similar format, where it was mostly like rock song after rock song after rock song. And I think that American Idiot was better than that. Or like Hedwig and the Angry Inch, even, where it was, it felt like a rock concert. And that one was so much better. I didn't end up caring for any of the characters. No, it was just, I'm 100% with you.
Okay, good. That's good. That's good. Yeah. And I mean, as far as like a classic that I think's overrated, I mean, I have to say some of the classics like Hello Dolly, I'm like, I could do with that. Like, it's fine. I don't hate it, but like, it doesn't do anything for me as far as story and I guess also I'm not the biggest Into the Woods fan. And people love that, but
I love Into the Woods.
I don't love that. I like Company way better than Into the Woods if we're going Sondheim. I think.
Oh, see, and I love both Company and Into the Woods. I think both of them are fantastic. A classic, I'd probably have to say Carousel. And that's, a lot of people would probably agree with that these days. Just
it
it's
has
a very
beautiful songs, but problematic.
Yeah.
It's
very problematic music.
Yeah. There's a lot of those that I couldn't believe when I went and saw Thoroughly Modern Millie. I was like, this show isn't that old. Like, it feels old, but it's actually not that old. And I'm just like, what?
I know. When I first saw it, I thought it was an old musical. And then I'm like, wait, this is not like a 1950, 60, what?
Like the human trafficking plot? You're just like, what? They desperately need a revival of that and like completely take out that whole part. It's so bad. You can't do it.
No. Like, yeah, I agree with that one.
Yeah, it is bad. But
I agree.
what do you think is like an underrated show that doesn't get much love, but you really enjoyed it?
It's probably one that most people don't even most people are probably not even aware of. It's called Bear.
Okay.
And it's a rock opera. It's billed as a rock opera, and it's a Romeo and Juliet type of musical between it's a gay Romeo and Juliet musical, and it's written in the early 2000s, and they had an off-Broadway production of it in, I think, about 2012, and it didn't quite make it to, I think Taylor Church was in it. And it didn't quite make it to Broadway, unfortunately. And they changed quite a bit of it, but I just love the show, and it's got a cult following. And I would love to see it at some point get the love it's due. But it's in my top 10 and always will be.
I feel like I've heard of it, maybe from you.
Yeah.
I feel like
I love it. And there's also that's probably my favorite one that I really I adore, and it's just never gotten much traction. Well, it's gotten a lot of cult following, but it's never made the rounds as much as I would have loved to see it. It's got some beautiful songs in it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's popular here in Utah, but I don't know, outside of Utah, Daddy Longlegs, I absolutely just love that show. I think the songs are so good. It's so charming. It like, I feel like it got me through the pandemic because it was like the only show that places could do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that show. I also I really enjoyed, I didn't see it on Broadway, but I really enjoyed Head Over Heels. And that got like eviscerated on Broadway. The critics hated it. I saw it at the Grand. They did it, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny, and the songs were catchy, and I thought it was creative. It was different. I don't know. I liked it.
And it's interesting, the shows that like make it onto Broadway and that do really well. And some don't. It's just crazy.
It was a little like try hard at times. I can understand why it got some pushback. Like they have like this non-binary god that comes, and I thought it was kind of funny, but I could see how someone was like, okay, like every element had to be quirky and inclusive and saying something in a mess. So I can understand how that it was a little much, and maybe they were like, they kind of were trying to do too much. Yeah. But still overall, I thought it was enjoyable.
You quite like it. I haven't seen Head Over Heels. I have seen Daddy Longlegs. I don't remember it though. I've seen so much.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it. What was the plot of that one?
Daddy Longlegs, it's about this girl who's an orphan who gets this sponsor that agrees to help her go through school, go to college, but she just has to write a letter every week, I think,
Oh
to
my man, I haven't
this
seen it.
patron who she names Daddy Longlegs because she sees his long legs in the shadow. And so she thinks he's like an old man. And in the movie, it's based on a book, and the book's cute. But the movie, they have it's Fred Astaire and I think Leslie Caron. Anyway, somebody, and huge age difference. And so it's a little weird in the movie, but in the musical, she thinks he's an old man. He's actually not. He's just like a rich young person. So they basically fall in love through letters. And that's like an extremely, I love that whole theme. Whenever I love She Loves Me, I love You've Got Mail, I love Shop Around the Corner. Just that whole idea of falling in love through your words. Is very, I think, attractive to me, maybe as a writer. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I love that. I haven't seen
it. So that's why it's such a hard show to do, because you have to have two people that are charismatic enough, that have chemistry enough that they can carry the entire show. That's the only two actors on the whole thing, and that's why you could do it during the pandemic, because there's only two. The songs are so catchy, charming.
Is there a streaming version of it somewhere?
I think maybe on Broadway HD.
Okay.
I think maybe it's on there. I think
I'm not sure, but I have not seen that one. I thought I had.
Oh, really? It's done here quite a bit. So just look around for the next time. I think they're going to do it at OPA.
Oh, okay. I love OPA.
Yeah, they're so good up there.
One of those ones that the first time I saw something there, I'm like, oh, what have I been missing? Why?
My favorite of them, they did A Legally Blonde, and they had body positivity casting. And it was so refreshing to see Elle Woods in a plus size actress. Like, that was so fun. And it wasn't just that, it was also a very talented actress, but but I just appreciate that they are trying to push the boundaries up there.
Oh, that's awesome. Zig does that a lot as well.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of diverse and body positivity up there, and I like to support them because of that.
Yeah, I saw Kinky Boots there. And I thought particularly the Lauren actress.
Oh yes,
her name was good. Sydney. She was so good. I told her on Instagram, I said, I will see anything that you do going forward, because
she's incredible.
She was so good.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question. There's so many, almost all musicals these days are based on movies, but if you were given the task, pick a movie that has not been made into a musical, what would you pick? What do you think would be good?
And that's a hard one. That was a hard one for me, because I kind of don't like movies that are being made into musicals. And I don't watch a lot of movies because I watch musicals. So it was kind of hard. I had to go back into my Rolodex of when I do watch movies. And I don't think it's been made into a musical, but I probably would lean into probably like Dead Poets Society is what I thought that would be something that I could see really done beautifully.
Yes.
I love literatures, because when I'm not playing in theater, I like to read and write. And so that's why I'm like, okay, that's or any like Shakespeare's. I think Shakespeare has the potential. But then that's literature. That's
I think Dead Poets Society is a pretty brilliant choice, because it has a lot of good spots. I think you could put songs in, and it's so theatrical at its base. The whole conflict is how dare this young man want to be in a play? I mean,
so that's kind of what I fell into. I'm like, it's very, I like the dramas. I like more serious things, and so I thought that's the one I kind of.
That's a good idea.
What about you?
Well, so I said for a long time that I think The Quiet Man would make a great musical. It's with John Wayne and Catherine O'Hara, and it's about this boxer who has this he kills a man in boxing, and so he's like horrified, obviously, and so he decides to leave the States and go to back to his ancestral home in Ireland. and he
Mhm.
meets this fiery redhead there.
Oh,
And I just feel like with the Irish themes, like the movie has some outdated aspects to it,
yeah.
but I think with the romance and the Irish themes, I feel like you could have some real fun with it and make a really good musical.
Well, that sounds cool.
Yeah. I've also said for a while, and I know they've tried to make it into a musical. It hasn't happened, but I think Princess Bride would be
Oh,
so good as a
oh,
musical.
that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be really good.
Yeah.
That would be really good. What about books? And I'm putting you on the spot because we didn't.
Yeah. Well, there's this book called the True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle, which I don't understand why it has never been made into a movie.
Mhm.
I think it could be a great musical. I think it could be a great movie. It's about this girl who it's set in like, I don't know what, like 1867, something like that.
Okay.
And like Victorian times.
Okay.
So she's like prim, proper girl, and she ends up through various contrivances, she ends up on this ship going to America. And it
Ah,
turns out that it's a pirate ship.
interesting.
And so she ends up kind of becoming a pirate. And it's just a really fun story. And it seems like, why has this not been made into a movie? Because it just seems like it has all the elements, of like, we love these empowered female stories. And so I don't know why, because it was like a Newbery Award winner. It's like a pretty big success. It's not some obscure movie, but yeah, I think that would make a good,
That sounds really good.
yeah.
Adventure and all that kind of stuff. That
Yeah,
would-
your daughter would like it. True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. It's a
that's
good
what
one.
of course, it reminds me of Pirate Queen. Just, a little bit.
Yeah. The other one, and this is just my own personal bias, but my sister has a graphic novel that kind of took off a little bit called Allergic,
Okay.
and about this little girl who wants to adopt a dog, but she's allergic.
Oh,
And I think that you could have something there that you'd have to add to it quite a bit to make it into a full story,
uh-huh.
like a 2-hour thing. But I could push that out to people. Check it out because it's
That would
really
be
good.
really cool.
Yeah.
Ah, that would be really cool.
But
that's
do you
fun.
have a book that you would?
I probably there's so many. I love reading. It's a very dark and harrowing book, but they just made it into a play in London. And it's called A Little Life. And it's pretty harrowing, but I know there's some like unapproved musical, like somebody's written a couple musical numbers from it. So it's not like official,
Mhm.
but somebody has done a couple musical songs from it. But they just did a play of it in London, but I would love to see if they could make it into a musical. It'd be a pretty harrowing musical, but
I haven't heard of that one.
yeah, they just did a play of it in London, and it's well, they did actually a 4-hour play. I went and saw it in New York, and it was in German or Dutch. I think it was in German, and it was subtitled. And don't ever see a play in subtitles.
The only thing I've seen a few operas in my day with the subtitles going, but that's the only.
I think an opera is different just because you get, well, I don't know. The play, there's so much you miss not being able to see.
Well, you don't go to the opera for the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter. You just go to hear the beautiful music.
And exactly. And with a play, there was so much nuance I missed from the actor's voice, from the actor's facial expressions and voice. And the subtitles it was such a wide gap. And it moves so quickly that you missed a lot of the nuance, and I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
It was 4 hours. But I'd be interested. They just did the English. They just did a revised English version of it, cut down about a half an hour, 45 minutes. But
I guess I just recently saw at the cinemas, they had the they had the Spirited Away live on stage,
Oh,
but so you were reading the subtitles just
and
like you would any other anime.
yeah.
And so that worked pretty good, but it's also what is not a show that has a ton of dialogue. It's more about the images and so
And I
that
watch
worked pretty
subtitled
well.
movies all the time, but
Yeah.
you're reading an inch away from the picture.
Yeah.
So your eye tracking movement is an
Right.
inch versus 40 feet.
That makes
So
sense.
your traction is so much different. You miss so much because you have
Yeah.
to move so much further versus because I watch subtitled shows all the time and you don't miss anything.
Yeah.
But the distance you have to move between the subtitles up
That
here
makes sense.
to the actor is so much greater that you miss so much more.
Yeah.
And I did not expect that.
Yeah.
So I yeah. So A Little Life would be probably the book. Or one of the classics, like I would, East of Eden, or
I would love to see
Rebel
North
Without
and
a
South.
Cause. Or what?
North and South.
Oh,
Elizabeth Gaskell. I would love to see that.
that would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we've had so many versions of Jane Eyre. How have we never had?
Right. Yeah. This is true.
We've only had one movie version, and that was for BBC, which is brilliant. But
Yeah.
I'd love to see more. But anyway, one last question before we go. So a lot of people have said that Broadway has turned in kind of the amusement park type shows, where you have your Disney's and your, IP shows. We've got Back to the Future now, which I've heard is amazing. But, sort of this thing. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's fair? How do you feel about that?
I think it has some of that. But you also have some, I think we had like 40 plus new shows this last season. There was an amazing amount of new work open last season. And they weren't the Back to the Futures and all the Disney things. And, we had some really incredible, Kimberly Akimbo's and even And Juliet, which was a jukebox musical, but had some really creative uses of the jukebox songs. I think there is a commercialization to Broadway, but it brings in tourism. Familiarity brings in money. A tourist is more likely going to go walk in the door and see Back to the Future versus Kimberly Akimbo, something they have never heard of. They just are because it's familiar.
Yeah.
And it brings in those dollars, and that helps keep the pipeline open. And it helps keeps funds going through Times Square, and it's the pipeline that trickles down throughout the entire community, the theater community, all the way down to your black box theater that's got 10 audience members in it, right, all the way down to our communities. So I think every form of theater is valid in my mind. It's jobs, it's providing work for every actor that's out there. There's money going into every actor's pocket, every musician's pocket, every stage manager's pocket. If it is providing work for those people, then it's good in my mind, because as audience members, we're not filling those seats yet. From the pandemic, the theater community is still struggling. We're still having a hard time getting audience members back, myself included. I have not returned to the level of theater going that I was doing pre-pandemic. I personally, I haven't, for a variety of reasons, right? And I make an attempt to, but there's reasons that I haven't been able to do that. And I think if any way we can encourage theater to happen and to be produced and for actors to be able to work, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. And we also have to consider that a lot of times these shows are the way that people get introduced, just like me with The Little Mermaid, even though it was a movie, in 1989, that you need a gateway to introduce kids to the experience of going to the theater and get excited about it. And I was just listening to a friend's, they were reviewing a production of Beauty and the Beast, and they were saying how all the, the kids in the audience getting excited about a show and getting excited about theater. And that has a lot of value.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're right. There's not everybody's going to love the crazy stuff. And like my ex-wife, for example, she wouldn't ever want to go to stuff like that, but she loved she would love the Britney Spears movie, the new Britney Spears musical coming out, or the Back to the Future musical. She would not like the Dear Heaven Hansons and stuff. She liked the light kind of stuff that she'd be familiar with. Those are the kind of shows that she would want to go to. Right.
Yeah.
So there's that value.
And sometimes they can really surprise you. Like for me, at least, I was not expecting to enjoy Shrek the Musical. I was like, oh, this looks so cynical. And I went and saw it and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so funny. I was dying laughing. And it was just a huge surprise for me.
Well, like Legally Blonde. It's one of my favorite musicals.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's incredible. And that's, you're tried and true. And American Idiot. It's a jukebox musical. It's one of my favorite musicals, right?
Yeah. The Wedding Singer. I didn't think that would be good, but it's so catchy. That's I think underrated, The Wedding Singer.
Yep.
I think it's really fun.
By its cover, you never know what you're going to get. And and it's just like, it's theater. Like, we should be theater lovers. We should be appreciating all forms of theater and not being snobby and judging it. Like, let's celebrate it and, try to encourage it and go see it.
Well, thank you so much for all you do for Utah theater community. And hopefully we'll all be able to save up and get out there and go on another one of the trips, because it was super fun.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be putting one together. Next, we try to do New York once a year, and we need to get back to London and Edinburgh. That would be really fun. 2020. Oh gosh, that's probably going to be 2025 before that happens again. But
I'll try to be there for that. That would be amazing.
We'll get back to the Fringe Festival, because everybody keeps asking, when are we going back to the Fringe Festival? So that's probably, crossing fingers, that'll be 2025.
Yeah. Well, and so anybody can be part of the Utah Theater Lovers group.
Yeah, the Facebook group, the meetup group. It's join it. I mean, it's free. You just pay, go to your show, go to dinner, whenever you want to do it.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, thanks again. And let us know, if you're listening, what you think about all the things we talked about. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And please, if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I'll have the playlist with all my Theater Tuesday content in the description, so check that out. And we also have the Patreon group and merch store. Check that out. And thanks so much for coming on and talking with us, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye.
Thanks.